Hey, Jennifer, how are you?
Hey, Jen Grace, I'm hanging in there. I wish I could say TGIF, but it is Thursday feels like a second hump day these days. So,
I think the whole week is a hump
the
day.
whole week, I know. It's a marathon. I know. How are you doing?
I feel like I'm okay this week. I've worked too much. I worked 60 hours last week, and I'm already over 40 as of yesterday this week. So I need it to be Friday as well. I'll just put it that way.
Let's put it that way. Yeah. Totally. Me too. Me too. I can't wait for the weekend.
So we have our dear friend Jack Kinley here with us today. How are you, Jack?
Hello.
I'm good. It's good to see you.
I know. Good to see you too. We last were all together at the NGLCC conference, National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, and it was in Tampa, right? And it's going to be in Vegas. Let's hold out hope for that this year, and end of July. But we are all certified business owners. We're very deeply involved with the NGLCC, big fans, and and Jack, we're really excited to talk to you today. You're a communications professional, so you talk about an important topic right now, always has been important, but elevated importance right now in terms of your guidance of companies and your clients, but also for business owners, the big conundrum we've all faced, I think, is we still have things to sell right now, and they're very important things and very relevant things too, perhaps especially now, right? For me, it might be inclusion. For you, it might be, getting those communications just exactly right so that they hit the right tone and they're elevating the right support for people. And Jenn Grace, for you, I mean, your publishing company births stories into the world, and that I can scarcely imagine more important stuff. And yet we sort of have been hesitating, as we were talking about, of how to market right now and let people know that we're still here to support. But in kind of it really feels kind of like very different. So
Yeah, it's just a different landscape. And then I'll hear from Jack in a second. But, last week, why I worked so many, it seemed unnecessary, but I had to get it done, is that I just created a new program, and I created it completely for free. So for anyone who's trying to get their book written right now, and they're just struggling with the organization or mindset or just writing or whatever it might be, I just decided last week on a whim that I'm just going to create this new program and just give it away for free. So for me, that's like my way of selling, if you will, right now. It's not really selling. It's just I'm giving, because I feel like now is the time to be giving and coming from a place of service and abundance and gratitude, even if we as business owners on the back end don't fully feel that way the whole time.
True statement. We are deeply afraid and worried. Yeah, we may be reinventing and rebuilding the plane as we're flying it.
Yeah.
As it's careening into the top of some trees.
As we are, yes. We're definitely barely off the ground right now. It's just boom, 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 boom.
So Jack, what are you telling people when you're having conversations with folks who are feeling like they're flying right into the top of the tree line?
Well, first I tell them that we are flying right into the top of the tree line. I think that's probably the most important thing, is to really honor the truth that we are where we are. And I haven't encountered anyone who has been here before. We're in new territory. And as a communications professional, my job is to go in when we are in new territory. So in some ways it's not completely unfamiliar to be in the unfamiliar. And the same tools are where we go. So we lean in hard on, let's acknowledge the truth that this is new and uncertain and strange. But also let's acknowledge that we're all people having human experiences around this. And I think we can all connect to that. Maybe I don't know, it's the unifying aspect of this is that it's affecting all of us around the entire world. I can't think of anyone who is above or removed or excluded from this experience. And I think we go there first with my clients. We spend a solid, I want to say 75% of our time just commiserating and holding each other up. And the remaining 25% of our time is developing strategies and crafting messaging. And honestly, there's tremendous value in that. I find myself giving away work accidentally Normally I wouldn't be doing that. But I love my clients and I love their employees, and that's why I do what I do. Last month we had a game plan for wellness communications for one of my favorite clients. I do have favorites, I'll tell you. And we just threw it out the window. It wasn't the right time to lead with that message. And we had already moved it to May for our May communications. And then I just came up with brand new messaging around mental health and wellness for employees, and just gave it to them. I was like, look, I don't care. This didn't take me that long. Here you go. You got to go with this. Like, run. I know you got bigger fires to put out elsewhere. This is taken care of. And hopefully, just remember I took care of it. That stuff will come back to you. And I did the right thing. And I could, it's hard to sleep at night right now, but that helps a little.
I love that community spirit of saying, which we should all be doing, what can I do right now that's easier for me to do? What can I do that is just like nothing for me? What can I contribute? And having that be our guiding factor. And when people are in crisis, communicating is hard to do well, right? It's I would imagine your competency doesn't go up, it goes down. And so it's so needed what you do to slow those leaders down, to be thoughtful, to maybe draft something, to write something, to literally give something to people. I see this a lot in my diversity consulting. The ERGs are coming up with all these creative solutions for their companies and, developing these and giving them. And then at this time, leadership's like, yes, run with it. Great. The gratitude for that. I wish that had always been there. It's interesting because we've been kind of advocating for the wisdom that lives in the diverse talent in every organization. We all on this call know that that's true. But right now, when you can solve somebody's problem and address their pain point right away with what you do well, what is a competency for you, what the power of a community you're a part of that you can marshal for something, it's I don't think it will go unnoticed. Jack, to your point, I hope the memory, hey, remember we helped you. And as I was kind of trying to keep my company alive, I was of service. It's a tricky spot we're in, isn't it? Because we really care deeply about our clients and we want them to thrive. And yet we're all feeling very personally scared. I know the D&I leaders in my network are scared for their jobs. And at the same time, they're trying to help the company navigate through this and be inclusive at the same time as they're losing their own teams and they maybe losing their own jobs. So it's just this like really painful thing. What's happening in the communications teams that you support and work with?
Well, communications is one of the industries that gets the bump from crises. Like we can preach all day long, all day strong, we always do, the value of communications and the role and the purpose. But you don't really see it until the fire starts. And you need to start telling people how to put it out. So, in my world, in my circle of communications professionals, we're all patting each other on the back saying, yes, yes, go. Like now's the time to remind people of the best practices. We pull together a tip sheet for communicating right now. And it really just highlights, first be a human and remind yourself how you feel. And do you want another communication about anything at all right now? And is this a communication you need? So we're trying to prioritize those things, key messages and key platforms. Let's stick to bare fundamental necessities and not overwhelm people even more. That's the temptation sometimes. Everybody's coming at you with great ideas and great resources. Do you need to sling those out and email employees every hour on the hour with these new ideas, or do you need to have an organizing structure somewhere? You have your go-to COVID-19 response page on your website for customers. You have one somewhere for your employees, whether that's the portal or an employee-only website. Just create a singular place with resources and keep them organized and ask yourself, is this adding value or is this adding to the noise and confusion? That's the hard part of this, I think.
Great advice. Jenn, are you doing that? with you? Are you parsing out your communications really carefully?
I think so. We definitely have one kind of place where all of the tips that I've been doing are all kind of housed, and all of the resources that are made available for people right now. I'm wondering, Jack, because I've gotten so many emails from companies that I've not done business with in a very long time and didn't even know I was on their list. It's the same boilerplate garbage every single time. What are you advising companies around that?
Well, I think the problem there is just bad list segmentation and not knowing the difference between a cold customer and a warm customer. They're basically erring on the side of, let's just hit everybody with something. I honestly, personally don't think it's a bad thing. I can tune it out. Honestly, for me, it gives me a good chance to unsubscribe to people that I don't should be hearing from anymore. And honestly, if they haven't reached out to me in 10 years, this is probably the one time I'm going to hear from them. Anyway, it hasn't been bothering me. And I would say I would advise my clients to err on that side. Just blanket everybody with that one thing, that first official notice if you need to. Just to make sure you're taking care of people, because who knows, on the off chance that 80% of that list is good, even if 20% of it's good, it is your responsibility to take care of your people. And I would say err on the side of, if anyone ever did business with you, they're kind of your people, or were at some point and might be again.
Very true. We talked about, as we were preparing for this, substitute the word sales for service.
Right.
Jenn, you alluded to it earlier, but the whole, think of it as staying in touch with people. Think about it as offering value without kind of keeping score. Think about it as we all believe in our products because they're good, and ours particularly create good in the world. They're not parasitic. I'd like to think, right, they're values-based. They increase belonging. And every organization, no matter who they are, is going to need to come out of this and pivot out of this with some real challenges around, like, maintaining community and cohesion. And that's for the people who have this sort of survivor guilt of still being in jobs, right? So there's going to be, and who gets to come back to work, and what does coming back to work even mean? And there's going to be no return to the ways, I think that the sort of life of the employee as it was traditionally experienced is going to be totally different. So this is a great opportunity for all of us, I think, to get our values to the forefront, to kind of say, well, there is a different way to do all these things that we have thought were enough. They weren't enough. We knew they were never enough, but I think we weren't listened to. I mean, Jack, I wonder, is there an openness to being listened to right now around your key message of people first messaging, of like leading with humility and vulnerability and truth and transparency and all the things that you teach? Is there a listening now that wasn't there before?
There really is. And I think, for me, it's like, it's so weird, but it's like the clouds parted and there's a big beam of sun shining down on what I do and my values right now. And it's like the worst way to possible to get those clouds to part. But sometimes that's what it takes. And I'm not saying this situation is good at all. But it is, and it's not fully dismantling those things that keep people from acting this way at work. But it is at least temporarily keeping people from barking everything up a chain of command. Like, people know the right thing to do. And people are willing to sort of elbow their way in and dismantle systems for the short term, at least, to do the right thing. And that's what I hope we take away from this, is this, this memory of that muscle, that we can do the right thing quickly and without risk, when we need to. And I think let's remember that when we come out of this. Not everything has to be a political game or be cross-examined to the nth degree. Like, there's, do your due diligence and make sure you're acting responsibly, and sending people to safe resources and taking care of people, but don't get in your own way. I think because the stakes are so high, people are stepping aside and letting the right thing, just letting that train out the gate, or horse out the gate, or train out the station, whatever the metaphor is.
We get it.
Yeah, you don't have to be perfect right now, so
Right, that's true.
that's my point.
I love that. The whole sort of the carefulness and the caution and the chain of command and the approval, endless approvals and running things by legal. And,
Yeah.
I think it's a moment for our gut and our intuition to really come to the fore. I've been talking a lot about actually the feminine that we've been talking about that's on the rise in business, right? And as that changes, it will bring with it a different lens. And I would say that the things we communicate about, the ways we communicate about it, the comfort with perhaps vulnerability, or I don't know, the way to speak to people in a way that generates connection. I mean, that's so needed. And I don't mean to make it gendered, because it's not, but because it's something that many of us of all genders can practice if we were, like you said, if we were given free reign to do it. It's just that sometimes we're not at the table to influence that. Sometimes we're stereotyped about being, vulnerability has no place in business, even though everybody loves Brené Brown and says that they subscribe to that. I don't see a lot of that. And I think this crisis will bring it to the fore as something that's a leadership competency. I mean, Jenn, your authors, why is the path cleared right now for authors in a way that's different than what it was before pre-crisis? Like, how are you seeing that people's interest in this?
I feel like that's a good question. I think for people who are just now thinking about writing something, I feel like the path is definitely paved, because some have more time in their schedules to kind of get it done. That I think we're releasing the pressure from ourselves to be able to say, like, typically my schedule is 6 to 2, 8 to 5, whatever your hours are, to be like, you know what, I'm just going to sleep in today, or I'm not going to push it so hard today. And I think a lot of people are doing that, which I find inspiring. So I think that, you can find more room in your schedules to get writing done. But the authors who are releasing books right now, it is a whole other very wild, wild west type of landscape at the moment, where, Amazon's not prioritizing books. So if you try to buy a book right now, it's like a month, if not 6 weeks type of delay. But, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, all of the other bookstores, the big retailers, they're all shipping books. But people are so driven to buying books on Amazon that it's like, oh, I can't get it for a month. Like, people aren't thinking, oh, I could go get it from, 75 other retailers or thousands of other retailers. Yeah. So I think it's, doing a book launch right now, or doing a book tour right now, or talking about your book, if you've had one for a number of years, even, it has to be coming from that place of service. Like, Jack, the whole service is sales right now. Like, you can't just kind of be tone deaf about it and be beating the drum and saying, like, yeah, like, check out my new book, especially if it doesn't have a relevancy to this time. I was actually talking to one of our authors this morning who has a book about healthcare careers, and it was coming out now anyway. And so his is super, super timely and relevant. So we were just brainstorming, what type of, series of events can you have in terms of just doing live calls to have people ask their questions around their healthcare careers, and, do they want to be in clinical settings anymore, or do they don't? So, it kind of just depends on the topic, but I think everyone has to pivot. There's no, from a communication standpoint and a messaging standpoint, everyone is pivoting right now. And Jack, to your point of, just kind of paving the way to allow people to do that, I'm finding to be really inspiring. And I think a lot of people aren't overthinking things as much as they were before. It's come up in a number of conversations, but I think it's kind of great when it's like, don't focus on the technology, just do it as low tech as you can get away with, and just do something as long as it's coming from a place of service.
Yeah.
Excellent point. I think the perfectionism, it's time to really dismantle that. And it's held a lot of people back, and it's held a lot of, I would imagine, diverse authors, Jenn, back from feeling my story's worthy, right? Feeling I'm ready to tell it, feeling like, what does it matter, right? The whole imposter syndrome crap is tied to that perfectionism that I think a lot of us feel who have been underrepresented, right? We're in the LGBTQ community, we're business owners, right? Needing to show up so perfectly because we realize we're so tenuously at the table anyway. That's a message for this crisis to say, now is the time to show up. And, I know that we take some risks when we show up as really ourselves because we're already kind of tenuously at the table. So I do worry about that a bit, because I think some people who are more sort of in the mainstream need to be the ones that are vulnerable and showing up, imperfectly right now. And I would coach the leaders that are communicating right now to be imperfect, to not have the answers, to talk about what you don't know, to talk about what you're feeling, to talk about, just be real with people. But for those of us who literally don't have the luxury of being real in a way because of how the world is uncomfortable with us and who we are, or what we're talking about because it's controversial for some, I do think there's in a vacuum that we're going to be in here for a while, new voices and new stories can come to the fore and be heard and listened to and almost metabolized in a different way, because things have slowed down. And we maybe can listen and learn now and take things in a different way. I mean, I know that I am incredibly sharp right now and creative because I'm super present. I got through sort of the 5 stages of grief. I still feel them, but like I'm trying to sit in acceptance and sort of what's possible. And it's actually really, I wish we had this just stoppage sometimes, not for these tragic reasons, but we need to stop and just have time to reflect on what the right thing is to do, what we truly want to create. Are we on the right path professionally? If not, what are we doing to change that? I mean, this is a real reckoning for a lot of us. And what are we going to build coming out of this? Not just to survive, but I hope to thrive. I hope to work from our purpose and our truth. And if that was not true before, how can we see the opportunity in this moment, which is very rare? Somebody said to me, we're living in the midst of a miracle right now. And I thought, what a strange word with the tragedy, but it's a beautiful thing to hold. Imagine what's being created right now. Like that hasn't been before, or Jack, that's getting accelerated right now that was never heard before. So I believe that something very magical is happening right now. In addition to something tragic. And, isn't that life and the world? And, we are animals in this world. And I think that that's very much from nature. It's the beauty and the tragedy and the cruelty and the gorgeousness and all the things that we are happening all the time. We're experiencing that.
I have a question for both of you that I'm curious what your input would be. As it relates to people covering or hiding their identities in the workplace and settings like that, do either of you predict that there's going to be a bigger influx of people just being more open and out in the workplace around whatever, not necessarily just LGBTQ, but any stigmatized identity? Do you think that we might see an influx because people now have a different maybe set of values or a different kind of moral compass as a result of having gone through this?
And knowing about the most vulnerable, right? The education we're getting right now about who's most vulnerable, and racist attacks on Zoom and anti-Asian American racism going on, and the need. I mean, I think a lot of particularly privileged people are like, whoa, this is real. Like I might have denied it before because it wasn't my experience, but now I see it all over the place. And so I think, Jenn, if education is what's going to unlock the change, then I do think we are all getting schooled right now. But it's painful to see. I mean, it's like when you think of like the disparities about how COVID is taking certain lives and not other lives, in great numbers. That's something that maybe some of us would have known would happen because of systemic racism and institutional racism and our social fabric and who is taken care of and who isn't. But the number of people that had no idea is staggering. And we've known this. I mean, this is why we educate, because a few of us are sort of in that work and the majority is not. So I'm hoping that we are changed. I did have some people share on my call yesterday or 2 days ago that I'm scared to bring my full self or be more vulnerable myself right now because I'm worried about losing my job and giving anybody any fodder to make that decision. And on the flip side, there's other people who said, I can't hide who I am anymore. There's so much about me now that is being seen, whether I like it or not, because we're working in this environment. So, I have some mixed feelings in my communities. About you, Jack? What do you think?
Well, I think like what you're tapping on is the layers of privilege. Like some of us can and some of us can't, or are afraid to and have less privilege and have more at stake or at risk than others. And I think you're going to see some do it and some not able to do it. And fortunately, I mean, you know, those who do, hopefully they push things forward and open doors for those who can't. One of the most interesting aspects I've seen is because my clients are very corporate. And, you know, a lot of my clients, they leave home at home and they just work. They're type A, they come to work, they work, and then they go home. And you don't know anything about their lives. And suddenly they're doing Zoom happy hours and like sharing pictures of kids, or kids are just coming in, the dog climbs in their lap, and like the wall just has come down. And I've gotten to know my own clients better through these things. And, you know, there's a big gift there. And I've been more on the front lines myself with my clients. You know, I have to talk about the mechanics of, let me check with my husband and see like what his meeting schedule is like, because I don't want to be echoing like beside each other, and see if I can get the office. Like today I'm in the home office, but most of the day, almost every day I'm working at the dining room table, because I prefer the natural sunlight. But so like we get those human stories, just because we've been forced into it. And in some ways it's good and for me, and in other ways it's risky for others. So I don't know. I think it's going to cut both ways. But hopefully people remember the model of what we're capable of when we come out of this. And we don't lose that. And we start making more room for that intentionally after this.
That's a wonderful thought, Jack. Thank you. I know we have to wrap up, but that was a great call to action to sort of notice what is full of possibility and magical right now, that we are figuring it out together, and committing that we will not let the good stuff be lost as we kind of come out of this, and using our voice to influence and advocate for that is critical. So keeping that, talk about being a good communicator, right? I think we all need to put our communications professional hat on and say, what am I talking about? What am I thinking about? What am I writing about? How am I, if I'm in charge of anybody's sort of getting information of any kind to people, how can I be of service, like we talked about? And what do I hope remains that I'm discovering right now? You know, and if we can document that, I think too, it'll give us some evidence of what was really working, right? And I think the documentation is important, because there's still some people that are going to go back to business as usual. And it's like, we have to be able to say like, no, here's what happened actually that was different. And here's why it was better.
Right.
Here's why it was, and who it was better for. And how did people feel as a result of it? If we could measure belonging right now, it'd be so interesting to understand how that landscape has shifted. And I might argue there may be less and more, depending on which lens we look at it through. And there's a lot of learning in that. So thanks for joining us today, Jack.
Yeah, it was just great to see you.
This was really wonderful. Thanks for all the good tips. Thanks, Jenn Grace, too. What's our next one of this?
We are on next Wednesday. Nope, that's a lie. That's the following. Hold, please. Next Tuesday. Next Tuesday at 45, 1-ish Eastern time.
Wonderful. Okay. Everybody join us there. Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, thank you.
Hang in there.
Take care.
Talk to you both